Hello and welcome. We've taken the South Metro Fire Rescue podcast on the road today, and we're here at Station 38. My name is Captain Chris Wells, and I'm one of the hazmat team coordinators here at South Metro. And I'm here with Brandy Miller. She's with our community risk reduction team. And today we are going to, with the backdrop of our hazmat truck, we want to make sure that it stays here as much as possible and we're not out on the road responding to some of these lithium-ion batteries. So today we just wanted to inform you, and I'm going to turn it over to Brandy, and she's going to just kind of explain kind of the format of what we're going to talk about in today's podcast.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, we're going to talk about lithium-ion battery fires and fire safety as it relates to our community, to us, and to our emergency responders. We're going to talk about what a lithium-ion battery is and what common types of devices you can find them in. We'll talk about what happens when a lithium-ion battery fire comes about and goes into a process called thermal runaway. So we'll talk about what that means and some of the causes that will make it go into thermal runaway. We'll also talk about some of the hazards that are very unique and specific to thermal runaway, especially in comparison to other products and other batteries. We want to be able to recognize what kind of products will meet safety standards and how we can be safe consumers and smart consumers. Then we also want to talk about the associated challenges with how we should be disposing of these lithium-ion batteries and disposing of them properly and recycling them, never throwing them in our trash. So they have a great energy density. They're usually lightweight and portable, and the best part is that they can be recharged up to thousands of times, because lithium-ion batteries are the most popular battery chemistry and a lot of our commonly used items. It can be from wearable technology like smartwatches, cell phones, all the way up to electric vehicles and solar energy storage systems. With the growing popularity of these lithium-ion battery products, a lot of consumers and first responders were faced with extreme health risks and injuries, not being prepared for what could happen with these items that we use every single day. So from the first sign of a problem with a lithium-ion battery, you might have less than a minute to escape one of their fires. Although the devices that we use with these batteries in them make our lives easier in many ways, we need to make sure that we know how to prevent these fires happening with these popular batteries, and if a fire does occur, what we can do to stay safe and how to respond to that emergency.
We're also consumers in the fire service. We have a lot of these type of devices, not only at our fire stations, but at our personal homes as well. So what's been so hard about this whole topic is there's so much information that's out there. Sometimes it's hard to kind of discern what is the accurate information and what are some things that are just kind of misnomers out there in the public. So what we really wanted to do with this podcast was to inform all of you that are watching this podcast of what we actually know, some of the hazards that are out there associated with these types of batteries, but most importantly, how to prevent these types of fires from occurring. And the best way to do that is to give good information so that we can move forward.
You and I have been doing some of this for a couple of years now, before there was nationally some resources available to help on both ends of the spectrum. So from the CRR, or community risk reduction perspective, and the hazmat and emergency response perspective, I think both of us had to learn by discovery some of these tactics and best practices, and now fortunately a lot of them are available, but for the sake of convenience, we're trying to package everything that we've learned along the way to help provide straight to the community and other fire departments, maybe save you even a little bit of time with what we've learned.
We want to kind of break it down into different segments. So the first thing is, when you're buying a lithium-ion battery, what makes that battery different from a traditional battery that we've used for years? And I would say the biggest difference is the chemistry that they actually use to make these batteries. First of all, they call them lithium-ion. So you would assume that they're made out of lithium, but they're actually not. They actually have different metals that are used, cobalt being a common metal, manganese, but they have these electrolyte salts that are in there. And when the batteries become damaged or overcharged, or you're using a charger that was not designed for that specific product, they can go into what we call thermal runaway. And once that thermal runaway begins, normally with a normal battery, we can use water or a fire extinguisher to put those out. But in the case of lithium-ion batteries, traditional fire suppression just doesn't work.
Right.
So what would you say are some things as far as a consumer, what would consumers need to know when they're buying the next charger for their kid's toy or for their phone or all the other electronics we have?
It's best to just do your research as best you can. We have a website available, which is southmetrocrr.org, and we've put some of these resources together to help consumers be able to navigate that process a little bit easier. So I would say to figure out what type of battery is going into the product that you're looking to buy, as well as the charger. I know recently there's been confusion about what kinds of batteries are in rechargeable devices. So there is a difference between lithium-ion batteries with the electrolytes and the way that they can enter that thermal runaway state, where other batteries like lithium polymer or lithium alkaline, anything else, other types of batteries don't have that same reaction. But knowing the difference of those two will help a lot, and making sure that you're using a manufacturer charger or products that come with that device are specified for it, or the equivalent when you're buying a replacement, because we all lose or break chargers and can't always have the OEM one with us when we want it. So on that website that I mentioned, we have the list from OSHA that will tell you what a NRTL is, which is a nationally recognized testing laboratory. So those have been checked, and that means that they've put that product through a whole bunch of testing, specifically fire safety testing. So they'll try to damage it, they'll try to overcharge it, they'll try to leave it out in the cold, they'll try to expose it to extreme heat. Any of the other mechanisms of damage they will purposely do, and then it'll get rated based on its ability to avoid being an extreme fire hazard. So when you're buying products, you can look for those icons, look at that OSHA list to see which brands are reputable. Even when you're shopping online, you should be able to find in the description if it's been safety tested. So yeah, that's a great way to kind of do your research and make sure that you're buying the right thing. On that note also, there's some social media trends, things that become popular before people really understand them. And so I would just say it's important to just make sure you know the difference and you understand how things work, and that thermal runaway is really specific to those lithium-ion batteries before you buy even fire safety products.
The best way I think to describe this is if you're buying a device of some sort, it generally comes with the matching charger that goes with that. And where we're seeing a lot of problems is to buy that same charger, if that quits working, you can go on to a website and find something that was a quarter of the price, and you think, well, as long as it charges my device, I'm gonna get that.
Or at any big box store for that matter.
Exactly.
Too. Yeah, just any
and
charger.
The problem is, if you think about it, you've got a smart device which will only allow the charging mechanism to take it to a certain charge, and then it stops the charge. That same comparable charger does the same thing, and they work together. If one of those, either the device or the charger, does not work that way, you can actually charge the device past the point of its safe level of charging, and that's when we get some of these fires that occur. And we're seeing a lot more of these in the fields every day.
And you can find the specifications for your product on the box or on the product if you need to replace the charger. And you can also look that up online as well if you don't have the box or any of the matching information, just to find out what you would need to be able to replace that.
We've received a lot of calls, texts, and emails about how do I know that my device is problematic? Because a lot of times when these things go into runaway or they catch fire, there's little to no warning. But there actually is, but you have to be kind of a trained observer to know what's going on. So I think what we really want to focus on is if you are handling a battery or a device and it's hot to the touch, you should immediately remove it from the charger. And at that time, that device probably it needs to cool down. And if it continues to happen, again, that smart device is not working properly, and that can be a problem. The other thing is if they become damaged, so dropped, punctured, anytime a device is actually damaged to the point where it's recognizable, probably a good time to consider replacing that device. And then also, the way these batteries are designed is they should be charged on an open, flat surface where the heat can dissipate during the charge phase. So if you keep it on a couch or under a pillow,
no soft surfaces.
that heat that is coming off of that device has nowhere to go, and that's a lot of times where we can see batteries start fire in that case as well.
So thermal runaway usually means that it sends the battery into an uncontrollable self-heating state, which is the difference between the other type of battery chemistries, what makes these ones so volatile and dangerous, and that we should be more aware of them. So once that mechanism of damage happens, and it even happens sometimes in a manufacturing error, luckily things are regulated a little bit better now, and we're getting better products that have been safety tested, especially in our state of Colorado. But if those are regulated and they've been safety tested, then we're looking at these things that you can do to be smart consumers and be charging correctly. Unplug the devices as soon as they're fully charged, using the correct charger when you do that. And then making sure that you're not exposing them to the extreme temperatures or abusing them, dropping them, puncturing them, things like that. If something were to go into thermal runaway, I think that's where we want to also expand on. You might have less than a minute to escape a home fire. So in traditional home fires, we'd say that you have about 3 minutes or less to escape with the modern materials we have in our homes today. With the lithium-ion battery going into thermal runaway, in a confined space, it can be an explosive reaction, and it puts off toxic gases. And then if we try to apply water to it, Captain Wells can talk about what happens with that, and it actually creates more safety concerns, environmental concerns. So just on a small scale, we want to warn that if there is a lithium-ion battery going into thermal runaway, whether you're at home, you're outside, and it happens to an electric vehicle, anything really, and you understand the signs of hissing, white puff of smoke coming out, flames shooting out almost like a firework. And seeing those signs getting started, you want to get away from it as fast as you can. Call 911. Don't try to suppress it. Don't try to move it. There's a difference between a device you're using getting warm, like Captain Wells was saying, and unplugging that device and letting it cool down, versus once we know it's going into thermal runaway, we don't want you touching it. Just get away from it and call the experts.
Yeah, and that's a problem that we're running into, is it changes how we've trained the public to deal with these. We've always talked about the importance of having a fire extinguisher nearby, and big fires start small. I know that was a campaign that we've used in the past. Unfortunately, because there's so little time from the time that you'll start seeing what we call off-gassing, or a little bit of white smoke coming from a device, till the time it's actually fully involved and sometimes exploding, can be under a minute. So we're asking consumers that if this happens, don't run for the fire extinguisher. You need to get yourself and anyone else that's in that structure out of the building as quickly as possible and call 911. Because not only is it going to spread rapidly, but the gases that are coming out of these devices are extremely toxic, and it can take sometimes just as little as one breath, and you can have some significant serious injuries, if not leading to and including death. So we really want to emphasize this part to the public, that you don't want to try and put these things out. Water is not going to make it go out. Water in a lot of cases actually makes those toxic gases even worse. So we just want you to recognize, buy the right type of batteries that have been tested. Make sure that those chargers, even if they cost more, make sure that they match the device, and they've all been tested through that website that they can find. And when it does happen, immediately flee that area and call 911. On top of that, we want to talk about where you're storing these devices when you're asleep, because that's probably the scariest thing, is when you're alert, awake, and something happens, you can react. When you're sleeping, that's when you're going to be delayed in your reaction. So like we always talk about, always important to have fire smoke detectors. Make sure they're working properly. We want to have those carbon monoxide detectors, those CO detectors. And then on top of that, we don't want to put any device or a scooter or a bike or anything that uses lithium-ion batteries to charge it in an area that you would use to flee from your house or apartment, because that can actually trap you if that is the cause of the fire. So we want to make sure that those are not charging in a path of egress.
Exactly. And if you're practicing a home fire escape plan on that note, practicing your routes of egress and being able to get out in an emergency, we want you to try and have 2 ways out of every room if possible. And that can be a door and a window, or whatever you have available to you, but making sure that we don't store anything, especially something that can catch fire or explode, in those ways out. So I always get the question, if you have a fire extinguisher or you have something like a fire blanket that you could use on your way out in an emergency, I think we could say that you could use those things on your way out to help get you past the harmful or hazardous object or the fire, but it shouldn't slow you down. It shouldn't take you time to go get that extinguisher. If you already know how to use it and you could deploy it quickly as you're making your exit, that would be okay. And if I can throw one more thing onto what we were just talking about too, when you're doing your home fire escape or you are escaping an emergency, the importance of closing doors behind you and having your doors closed while you sleep. Another easy preventative thing that we can do to help lessen the severity of a situation or protect yourself in the first place. Just a regular bedroom door can work to help limit the spread of smoke and fire. So in that case, it gives you a little bit more time or helps protect whatever room that object is in until the fire department can get there to help.
So now we're going to talk about the different types of devices that are out there and what we're doing at South Metro and what our recommendations are. So I think the first thing we can talk about is what we consider small portable electronic devices. So cellular phone, a laptop, these are unique in the fact that they do have the lithium-ion batteries, but instead of having multiple cells inside the battery container itself, there's just one, what we call a pancake style battery. When those catch fire, they can also explode. They can generate a lot of heat and a lot of toxic gases. The best thing to do with that, like we've talked about, is get out of that environment as quickly as possible. But those are the devices we really need to pay attention to, making sure that we have the right charging and the right type of equipment that's been tested through those testing manufacturers.
Yeah, and age plays a factor too.
Yeah.
I remember there was a while where vape pens were in people's pockets, and sometimes those ones were just getting old for whatever reason and causing fires in your pocket. So
Yeah.
if you can't get away from it, like get it away from you.
Yes, and as these batteries get older, they become more likely to actually catch fire. So if you notice any of the signs and symptoms that we're talking about, our recommendation is to allow the charge to just allow that device to completely uncharge. And it's a really good idea to have a smoke detector in every room in the house, including the garage, because we all know that we are charging a lot of our tools and equipment and vehicles now in a garage. And it's a really good idea to put your smoke detectors in the garage.
Yeah, and just a reminder, you should have smoke detectors in every bedroom or sleeping area, outside every sleeping area, on every level of your home, with the carbon monoxide detectors as well. That's that silent gas that you can't see or smell, so it's important to have something to warn you when it's present in your home. Those should be on every level of your home, including the basement. So just be familiar with what you're buying, be familiar with your homeowner's insurance, and all of the rules that go along with that. And then the smoke detectors are plain and simple just to keep you safe. If it's detecting something, you need to get out right away.
And as hard as it may be, the recommendation is you never want to charge anything while you're sleeping. Again, if you are going to charge things and it is while you're sleeping, any combustibles, anything that could catch fire near and around that is just going to intensify that fire. So we recommend that we don't want to charge these things near other items that could catch fire easily as well. The next thing we're going to talk about is what we call mobility devices. So those are your bikes, your scooters, your hoverboards. So this uses a different battery style. These are what we call the cell style batteries. So if you could imagine like a AA battery size and imagine like a scooter, you may have 20 of those batteries put together, which creates the large battery that you actually see. And what happens is when one of those cells becomes damaged or overheated, it can actually lead to the other cells near it also catch on fire. So it just creates this big problem, and that's what we call runaway. Especially around the holidays, we see a lot of gifts and people are buying these things and they're charging them. And especially when you're giving them to your children, a lot of times they get damaged, you're unaware of it, and that's why we really say keep a really close eye on those things, because we've seen a lot of problems with those, and even recently we've seen those happen as well.
And anytime those things are involved in an accident, we hope they're not. But as we get into talking about the electric vehicles or EV fires as well, just a collision itself could be enough to send a lithium-ion battery into thermal runaway, even in those mobility devices. So it's just teaching the kids too how to take care of it, charge it safely, keep the temperature as regulated as possible when you are charging it, and that if it does get damaged or they get in some kind of collision, to kind of get away from it, make sure that it's not going into thermal runaway before it's being used.
Yep, and if you ever walk by and it's hot to the touch, at minimum, remove that power supply, because that is not how those batteries are designed to operate. The next thing we're going to talk about, and we see this becoming more and more of an issue here in the metro area, are electric vehicles. Those are, again, you can imagine if we had problems with the smaller batteries, we have those bigger batteries that basically the entire undercarriage of a vehicle is one big battery. Those are very difficult as well. So I know we've had some footage where you see firefighters and they're not putting water on an electric vehicle fire, and people are asking why. So do you want to tell them kind of why that is? Because I know they look at community risk and say, why are our firefighters not putting water on a burning electric vehicle?
The safest way, if it's not threatening human life or property, is to let those fires burn because they are toxic, and if you put water on them and it creates the hydrofluoric acid and intensifies the gases that are coming off of it, it becomes an environmental hazard with runoff, and it's hard to control all of that as well. So the best thing that we've been able to do is get people away from them. Our response personnel will have full SCBA, breathing their safe oxygen in full PPE or personal protective equipment and gear, so that they're safe close to the scene, but other people are away from it. So just kind of isolating that and not adding fuel to the fire. It can take minutes, hours, or days for some of those to burn. We've seen electric vehicles reignite up to weeks later when they're at an impound. So they're just sometimes unpredictable. I'll let maybe you talk about some stranded energy issues and why we've had to just let it burn as the safest precaution instead of trying to aggressively attack and suppress.
Exactly, and again, the vast majority of electric vehicles are very safe. They operate very well. We don't have any issues with them. Unfortunately, when they do become problematic and they do go into thermal runaway, in the fire service, we have to treat them as a hazardous materials incident. And that's why I'm here on this podcast today, because our traditional means of suppression, putting water on it, don't work. And in fact, when we add water to the gases that are coming off of that battery, it makes it way more toxic. And we're talking immediately toxic to life and health. So if your car or you're on the roadway and you see it, the biggest thing is if you see a plume of the smoke coming off that battery, that is really toxic gas, and we don't want you to be anywhere near it. And that's why a lot of times, just recently, we had a car that caught fire at a charging bay in a grocery store parking lot. So because of that toxic gas, we had to actually evacuate the area so that we didn't have a secondary problem with people being exposed to those gases. So we just want to really emphasize, these are really dangerous, and just because it's not, you don't see flames, doesn't mean that can't hurt you. So we just want to make sure that you're aware of that.
And is there enough water?
Yeah, and there's really not enough water to put it out. And when we do put the water on it, we found that it actually makes the problem worse. If you're charging your electric vehicle inside of your garage, one, we just make sure that if you do have a charger that you're using to charge that vehicle inside your house, that it was installed by a trained, certified electrician. And again, make sure that you're well aware of the hazards that are associated, so that if you do recognize a problem, you can call 911 and get out of that area as quickly as possible. But basically, we do have tools and equipment that we're using that we normally wouldn't use on other fires. But these are all new and advancing, and we're trying to keep up with that technology the best that we can. But you'll definitely see there's some new things that we're trying to do, because unfortunately, we can't get rid of the oxygen that's being produced in these fires. So using water and trying to smother these fires just doesn't work. So now we're using things like a fire blanket. The fire blanket we're not necessarily using during the time that it's actually on fire, but as you alluded to earlier, they can catch fire again even when you think the fire's out. So as it's being towed to a salvage yard after it's run through its cycle, just as an added precaution, we put a fire blanket on those vehicles and it stays with the vehicle at the salvage yard, just so we don't have a secondary incident because of these kind of oddities that we see with these types of incidents.
Yeah, and the fire blanket you use is different than the fire blankets that people at home might use.
Correct.
So those are specified for electric vehicle fires, and they will usually cover a sedan or regular sized vehicle, and you have all of the ins and outs of that on the response side, but none of those fire blankets are rated or listed for home use, just to clarify.
Everybody's learning about the do's and don'ts with this new technology. So a big part of it is understanding more about it. And like we say, knowledge is power. So the more we can give good information to the public, we know that that is probably the best tactic that we can use to prevent some of these fires from occurring.
Yeah, and I would say in any motor vehicle accident involving an electric vehicle or hybrid, even if you're not seeing those signs of thermal runaway right away, still get out of the way, get to a safe place on the side of the road or away from the road, call 911, and make sure that people aren't gathering around those vehicles. We've seen some that had airbags deploy and they may or may not go into thermal runaway, but you certainly don't want to be standing anywhere near it, even if it was just a fender bender minor accident, just to make sure everything is safe before you get anywhere near those vehicles. So one of the other challenges is disposal and recycling of the lithium-ion batteries. Never throw batteries in the trash, especially the lithium-ion batteries. Like we talked about, there's many different mechanisms that can cause them to go into thermal runaway. And you might not think that that causes a lot of harm, but it does. We've had trash trucks that have had to empty their load right in a residential neighborhood or on the highway to help extinguish a fire and then be able to continue on from there. They can also happen in a residential trash where you have a fire on your property and need that to be dealt with. And all of these are hazmat responses, so they would require a hazmat technician to come out and be on scene and help take care of your issue. There's bigger impacts if a lithium-ion battery product makes it all the way to a recycling facility. It becomes damaged or goes into thermal runaway there. It can put the entire facility and the drivers at risk with that as well. So it is challenging. In South Metro, we cover 3 counties, and each of them has a different disposal company or what would you call it? Process, and different municipalities that do things differently. So we've tried to do our best to consolidate all of those resources and put those on our website as well to help our citizens navigate the best way to do that. What I've seen in some products, and this should become more popular, is that there will be a number on the back of the battery or the product that you can call to ask how you should be recycling those batteries. If it doesn't say that right on the product, there's a couple great ways that are becoming more popular. Call to Recycle can send you a box that you can return your batteries in, or you can find a local drop-off location. Again, we've had all those resources listed for you on our website, but there's definitely a process, and there is hope for recycling these batteries. It wasn't obvious in the beginning, and I think it's become a journey for some people to figure out how we can do that more efficiently and set up an infrastructure for that. So do you want to talk a little bit about, from your side, what some of the challenges are that we've seen with improper disposal of those batteries?
Unfortunately, this seems to be kind of like an onion. You get through one layer and now you're in another layer, another problem. But again, I think this is a great way to just kind of educate everyone with some really good information, and then that way we can kind of reduce this in the field. But normally when we had other types of devices, when they came to end of life, throwing them in the trash was what we've all done. But what we're seeing is, even if the device that you threw in the trash wasn't on fire or wasn't damaged at the time, as soon as it goes into that garbage truck, now as it goes along the way in its process of being dealt with, now we're seeing fires in trash trucks, we're seeing fires at landfills, we're seeing fires on the highway with the trash truck. So we just want you to be a responsible consumer. And again, if you go to the Community Risk Reduction website, they have all the information that you need for the county that you live in so that you can properly dispose of these, and you're not going to create a problem for someone else down the chain.
Right. So in some of those recycling and disposal challenges, we've seen those in different ways. Some of our community members have tried to bring them to the station, wondering what to do with them. And then on the other end of the spectrum, when there's been a fire, and it's now a hazardous material response, I don't know if you leave them with the citizen or how that works, but we've had to learn how to partner together to help solve this problem.
Exactly, because if you do have a problem with a lithium-ion battery at your house, we are not going to leave it at your house after we've responded. So what we now do is we'll basically place those batteries that have become damaged or caught fire into a non-flammable bin, and we'll actually seal those up so that we can work with a contractor to bring those up and properly dispose of them. So we don't want to leave a problem when we leave the scene.
We had to figure it out as we went, but from the community risk reduction side, we did some research to see what our counties were providing for resources, and that was a little tricky. So we tried to create one hub and made a flyer and a landing page to help our citizens navigate what they should be doing with those products. And then we taught all of our crews what those were for, and that if they got citizen inquiries or they were on calls, that they could be handing those flyers out with that information, not just lithium-ion batteries, but other home hazardous waste that they can dispose of as well. And then that led into the hazmat team side, if you want to share what we did to partner on that.
We're very fortunate at South Metro that we have some great resources, some teams that are working on the prevention side, on the response side, and what we've decided to do was, because those lanes were crossing, we wanted to collaborate and see what we can do moving forward to make this less of a problem in the community. So we worked with some recycling companies, and we actually got involved with the passing of a House bill that goes into effect next year that will lighten the load and provide more pathways for citizens to properly dispose of the batteries that they have that either are no longer working or become damaged at no cost to the taxpayer. So that was really exciting to work with. So we've been continuing to try and stay as far leaning as possible. So as things change, we're trying to make it easier for the consumer, safer for all involved, and that collaboration has been really important.
Absolutely, and having that built-in extended producer responsibility means that those manufacturers and those retailers will be responsible for collecting and recycling the batteries, and helps build the infrastructure to make that happen, as well as the community education. So where we've been trying to kind of figure that out as we go, there was only 2 states, I believe, when we started working on that had entered that territory. And so we're one of the newer ones that has actually gotten legislation passed in Colorado. So yeah, it will take a little while to take effect, but know that that's coming, and kind of a built-in protection that soon enough consumers will be able to recycle their batteries responsibly without too much of a headache or having to pay for those resources.
That new legislation is really going to help give us an avenue to properly dispose of these without having to bear the cost, and make it easier through that education, that public awareness on how do we dispose of these batteries.
So in light of Fire Prevention Week, which this year for 2025 is October 5th through 11th, we're really excited to announce that nationally the theme is Lithium-Ion Battery Fire Safety, and proper ways to charge, buy, and be a responsible consumer, and responsible recycling, and knowing how to dispose. So all of the things that we just talked about, it seems like the education, the community engagement is catching up, which is really exciting, and all of these resources are now available for everyone to use. So just a couple that we're excited about that we feature on our website and that we use in our regular community trainings. The NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, they are the sponsors of the Fire Prevention Week material, and they've got some great safety tip sheets and education for all ages. FSRI is the Fire Safety Research Institute. They started the Take Charge of Battery Safety, batterysafety.org website a year and a half ago or so, and they have some wonderful videos, footage, and a public service announcement to help keep people safe and see what the actual effects of thermal runaway and having a lithium-ion battery fire at home, what that looks like, and what you need to be prepared. And then just to name a couple others, FEMA's got some great stuff on FEMA.gov, Call to Recycle, and BeNiceToYourDevice.org. Really talk about the recycling and efficient use in the future, how we can be lessening our carbon footprint and making a difference in the future with using those devices over again. And then we talked about closing your door, which closeyourdoor.org is the Close Before You Doze campaign. So those are some of the great resources that we lean on in community risk reduction to help keep our community members safe.
And to kind of sum up what we've discussed, and we know we're kind of condensing this into a podcast, but I think it's really what we encourage you to do is lean into a lot of those resources that Community Risk Reduction has on their homepage, because you can find out a lot of information. And as always, if you need to get in contact with any of them, there is a contact us format in there so that you can send in your questions and comments. And I know they'll do a really good job of getting back with you on that.
So the best way to stay safe from lithium-ion battery fires is to prevent them from happening in the first place.
All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for us today. And again, we don't want to see this parked at your house in the near future, so we want to make sure that you're safe. Again, if you go to the Community Risk Reduction website, all the information that we talked about and more you can find there, and we want to just make sure that you're safe. So thanks for tuning in, watching, and listening, and we just want to make sure that you and our community stay safe.
Thanks for joining us.